It was supposed to be just another ordinary Wednesday. Laura had just come back from a long shift at the pediatrics hospital, her scrubs still faintly smelling of hand sanitizer and strawberry-flavored lollipops. She was halfway through reheating leftover lasagna when the phone rang. The moment she saw Jessica's name flash on the screen, a soft smile curled on her lips. "Hey sis, big news!" Jessica burst out before Laura could even say hello. "Our house is finally done. The contractors finished up early. We're throwing a housewarming party this Saturday. You and Mark have to come." Laura sank into the kitchen stool, letting Jessica's excitement wash over her like a warm breeze. "That's amazing, Jess. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait to see it." From the other end of the line came a delighted giggle. Jessica always giggled when she was overwhelmed with joy. It was a sound Laura had memorized since they were children. Since the accident. Since they lost mom and dad and became each other's entire world. "I even picked out a space in the yard just for our little barbecue area," Jessica went on. "Tom built a shed all by himself. He's so proud. We'll be doing the party inside it. I know it sounds weird, but it's cozy and private." "Inside the shed," Laura laughed softly. "You and your Pinterest ideas." "It's going to be great. We installed lights, a long table, everything." Laura could already picture it. The crisp smell of grilled meat, a long table of relatives she hadn't seen in months. Jessica twirling around the deck barefoot, showing off her new home like a little girl showing off a treasure box. "Of course we'll be there," Laura said. "Mark's already smiling." "Oh, speaking of Mark," Jessica added quickly, "do you think he could check the gas hookup in the shed before the party? Tom connected a grill to the main line, but, better safe than sorry." Laura paused. "The gas hookup? Is something wrong?" No, it's fine. I just want peace of mind. Mark's a pro, right?" "Yeah," Laura said slowly. "I'm sure he won't mind." When she told Mark later that night, he nodded. "Happy to help. I'll throw my tools in the trunk. Better safe than sorry." They both laughed. No one knew then that those exact words would become the difference between a celebration and a funeral. Later that night after dinner, Laura and Mark curled up on the couch, one of those quiet, ordinary moments that only feel extraordinary in hindsight. She told him about Jessica's request again, a little more clearly this time. "She wants you to take a quick look at the gas line Tom installed in their backyard shed," Laura said, passing him the last spoonful of melting chocolate ice cream. Mark paused. "In the shed? Yeah, that's where they're doing the barbecue." He set the spoon down slowly. "Wait, they're grilling inside a shed?" "Yup," Laura nodded, smiling. "Jessica says it's cozy and private. Plus, they've got lights and tables set up." Mark didn't smile. "Laura, that's not just weird, that's dangerous." His voice wasn't alarmed yet, but it had taken on a tone Laura recognized from years of hearing him talk about bad plumbing jobs, leaking gas lines, or things that just didn't feel right. "You're overthinking it," Laura said lightly. "You know how Jess is, always going for quirky." Mark leaned back, rubbing his hands together. "I don't know. Enclosed space, open flame. Even if the gas is hooked up right, it's still a shed. There's no proper ventilation." "She just wants peace of mind," Laura added. "You'll check it out, make sure it's safe. No big deal." But Mark didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on a spot just above the fireplace, lost in thought. That was the moment. The one Laura would later play back in her mind over and over again. It was the first time he looked unsettled. The first time a whisper of doubt entered their picture-perfect weekend. And no one was listening. Not yet. Saturday, 1:45 p.m. The Oklahoma sun hung bright in the sky, and the car's AC hummed gently as Laura and Mark drove through the quiet streets of the new suburban neighborhood. Laura balanced a carefully wrapped housewarming gift on her lap, an elegant vase she'd picked just for Jessica's dining table. Her heart was light. Her mind wandered to the familiar faces she'd soon see: Aunt Martha, Cousin Sarah, Uncle Frank. It felt like the kind of day nothing could go wrong. Except something was wrong. Mark hadn't said a word in 10 minutes. His hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly. A thin layer of sweat gleamed at his temples. His eyes, usually calm and sharp, were flickering between the road and the rearview mirror, like he was expecting something. Laura noticed. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Mark nodded without looking at her. But the nod was too quick, too mechanical. He adjusted the air conditioning, then the rearview mirror, then the side mirror, then back to the wheel. Laura stared at him. This wasn't right. "Mark," she said again. His knuckles were white now, the skin stretched taut across his fingers. And then, without warning, he slammed on the brakes. The car screeched gently to a stop at the side of the road. Not violently, but deliberately. Laura's body jerked forward slightly, the seatbelt catching her. "Mark, what the hell?" Mark didn't answer. He stared out the windshield for a long moment. His breathing was shallow, his jaw clenched, his shoulders frozen. Then, slowly, he turned to her. And in a voice unlike anything she'd ever heard from him, he said, "Laura, we need to go home, right now." Laura stared at her husband like he'd just spoken another language. "Go home," she repeated. They were less than 10 minutes from Jessica's house. The yard was probably already buzzing with laughter, the grill warming cousins arriving. Jessica, her baby sister, would be waiting at the door, eyes glowing, smile wide. This was her big day. Laura clutched the gift box tighter. "Mark, what are you talking about?" "I don't know," he admitted. I can't explain it, but something feels off." His hands were trembling slightly now, his brow furrowed, lips tight. "I can't ignore it, Laura. Please, trust me." Trust. That word hung in the air like a weight. She wanted to dismiss it, to say he was being paranoid, to laugh it off and keep going. But Mark had never said anything like this before, never looked this pale. Never pulled over mid-drive and begged her to turn back. He was a man of structure, logic, precision. So why now? Why this? "I don't understand," Laura whispered half to herself. Mark's eyes didn't flinch. "I don't either, but I need you to believe me. Just this once." Silence fell between them. Laura turned her head and looked out the window. Her reflection stared back, eyes uncertain, lips pressed tight. Her mind flooded with images of Jessica's laughter, their childhood memories, the endless bond they'd shared. Was she really about to let her sister down? On a day like this? Her heart ached. But then she turned back and saw Mark. Sweat on his temple, hands clenched, eyes wide with fear, but also love. He wasn't trying to control her. He wasn't trying to ruin anything. He was trying to protect her, and she knew it. Laura closed her eyes for just a second, took a deep breath, then said quietly, "Okay, let's go home." The house was quiet. Too quiet. Laura sat on the couch still in her dress. The gift-wrapped vase rested untouched on the coffee table. She hadn't moved in hours. Mark paced near the window, arms crossed, checking his watch every few minutes. He hadn't said much since they got home, only glanced at Laura with a tight, worried expression every time she tried to reach for her phone. She had wanted to call Jessica a dozen times. But something in Mark's voice, "Not yet, please," kept stopping her. At exactly 5:58 p.m., Laura's phone rang. She grabbed it instantly, her heart leaping. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello, this is Laura." A pause, then a voice steady, official, cold. "Is this Laura Harrison?" "Yes. This is Detective Johnson with the Tulsa Police Department. I'm sorry, but I need you to sit down." The world slowed. At approximately 3 p.m. this afternoon, there was an explosion at 147 Crescent Hill Drive, your sister's residence. Laura's heart stopped. A gas leak caused a severe explosion in the shed where a gathering was taking place. Mark turned sharply at the sound of Laura's gasp. 8 people are confirmed deceased. 5 others were injured and transported to the hospital. Your sister and her husband were among the survivors. They had stepped out just moments before the explosion. Laura's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She clutched the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. 8 dead. Cousins, uncles, aunts, family, gone. Mark rushed to her side, his face pale as snow. But all Laura could whisper was, She survived? Yes, ma'am, the detective said. They're both alive. Laura's hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. 8 people dead, gone, just like that. The names flooded her mind like a slideshow of grief. Aunt Martha, Cousin Sarah, Uncle Frank, Michael, gone, burned, erased. But Jessica was alive, and Tom was alive. Laura clung to that like a lifeline. She wanted to believe it was a miracle, that somehow fate had spared them. She dropped the phone to her lap, her whole body trembling. Mark, they're okay. Jess and Tom, they made it out. Mark didn't say a word, not at first. He sat next to her slowly, his eyes fixed forward, his fists clenched on his knees. Laura turned to him. Did you hear me? They're okay. Mark nodded almost too slowly. Then he said, almost in a whisper, That's the part that bothers me. Laura blinked. What? They were in the shed, but they stepped out minutes before the explosion. So why them? Why just them? Laura stared at him. Mark finally turned to her. His face was pale, his jaw locked, his voice quiet but sharp. This wasn't just fate. It was something worse. The words hit Laura like a slap. You think they knew? Mark didn't answer right away. Then he asked, Why do you think Jessica asked me to check the gas line? Laura's breath caught. She said she was worried. Yeah, but she didn't sound worried. She sounded vague. Mark leaned forward, elbows on knees. If someone truly fears a gas explosion, they don't throw a party in the same space. They cancel it, or they call the fire department, not their brother-in-law. Laura opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked down at her lap. The gift-wrapped vase, still unopened, still intact, unlike her family. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Laura opened it to find 2 uniformed officers and a man in plainclothes. He introduced himself as Detective Johnson, the same voice from the night before. Ma'am, he said, we're conducting a full investigation into the explosion. I'd like to ask you and your husband a few questions. Laura nodded numbly. Mark joined her at the door. They sat in the living room, the same room where hours earlier Laura had clutched her unopened gift and prayed she was wrong. Now she was desperate to know she wasn't right. The detective pulled out a notepad. We've found evidence suggesting that the gas line in the shed was tampered with intentionally. There are signs of forced modification tools used in a way that would cause a delayed ignition. Mark froze. Laura blinked. Tampered? You mean this wasn't an accident? The detective's voice was steady. It appears not. Then came the next bombshell. We've also discovered something else. Life insurance policies, taken out within the last 18 months, all tied to the victims who attended the party. Laura felt her breath leave her body. The detective continued. Each policy names either Jessica Collins or Thomas Collins as the sole beneficiary. Silence fell like a guillotine. Mark looked over at Laura. But she couldn't meet his gaze. Her world was no longer just broken. It was poisoned. 2 days later, a press conference. The police confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Thomas Collins has confessed to orchestrating the explosion alongside his wife, Jessica Collins. Laura was sitting at the kitchen table when she heard the words. The coffee in her cup went cold. Her breath stopped. She had known something was off. She had felt the unease. But still, this Jessica. Her baby sister. The girl who used to fall asleep curled next to her. The one she defended against school bullies. The one she raised after their parents died. The one she would have given her life for. A murderer? She dropped her cup. It shattered across the tile floor. Mark rushed in from the living room, but Laura didn't move. She couldn't. She just stared straight ahead, eyes empty. Mark gently touched her shoulder. "Laura?" Tears welled up, but they didn't fall. Instead, her voice cracked like dry wood. She was all I had left. Mark knelt beside her, but she shook her head. She knew they'd die. She invited them anyway. The betrayal didn't come with knives or blood. It came with a smile, a party invitation, a perfectly wrapped lie. And Laura had almost walked straight into it. It was a cold gray morning when the verdict was read. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, reporters, families, what was left of them. Laura sat near the back. Her hand gripped Mark so tightly her knuckles were white, but her face was expressionless, her heart hollow. Up front, Jessica sat still in her prison jumpsuit, her hair tied back, her eyes downcast. Not once did she look back. Tom stood beside her, face blank, lips pressed tight. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber. For the crimes of first-degree murder, the court sentences Jessica Collins and Thomas Collins to life imprisonment. No gasps, no screams, just silence. A heavy, devastating silence. Mark gently squeezed Laura's hand, but she didn't move. In that moment, she felt neither relief nor revenge, only loss. A kind of loss that doesn't break you loudly. It empties you slowly, like someone opened a drain and let everything inside you slip away. Laura looked at the back of Jessica's head one last time. That's not my sister anymore. A week after the verdict, the letter arrived. It came in a manila envelope folded twice, handwritten. The return address said Oklahoma Correctional Facility. Mark found it first. He held it for a while, standing in the hallway, then quietly placed it on the kitchen table. Laura didn't touch it. That evening, the envelope remained where it was, next to the fruit bowl, like something toxic, wearing normal clothes. Jessica's handwriting stared up at her. Familiar. Too familiar. Laura sat across from it for nearly an hour, not moving, not blinking, just staring. Mark entered the room. "Do you want me to read it for you?" he asked gently. Laura shook her head. She reached for the envelope, held it in her hands, paused, then, without opening it, she walked over to the fireplace and dropped it in. The flames curled around it slowly, like even fire had to mourn what it was burning. Laura didn't look away. She watched until the last blackened corner crumbled to ash. Then she whispered, not in anger, but in finality, "The sister I loved died a long time ago." 1 year later, spring. The trees in Tulsa bloomed early that year. Soft pinks, new greens, the kind of colors that felt like forgiveness. Laura stood at the front porch of a modest 2-story house nestled at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. A small mailbox, a flower bed she planted with her own hands. It wasn't the dream house from magazines, but it was theirs. "Home," she whispered, brushing her hand along the doorframe. Inside, Mark was assembling a crib. One hand on the wood, the other on a folded instruction sheet, wearing the same quiet concentration that had saved her life once before. Laura stepped in, resting her hand on her growing belly. 5 months. The baby kicked gently, as if agreeing with her silence. She smiled. They hadn't spoken much about Jessica lately. There were no pictures of the past in this new house, no reminders on the walls, but the echoes lived inside them. Still, this wasn't a house built on grief. It was built on choice, the choice to love again, the choice to believe, the choice to grow from ashes. Laura sat on the windowsill, watching Mark struggle with the final screw. "You're getting better at this," she teased. He looked up, smiled. "I had the best reason to learn." And in that simple exchange, there was something sacred, a quiet promise: the future starts here. Laura stood in front of the entrance to her new hospital. The morning light spilled over the polished glass doors, and her reflection stared back, older, quieter, but stronger. She took a deep breath, adjusted the badge clipped to her uniform. Nurse Laura Harrison, Pediatrics Department. It was a fresh start, new hospital, new patients, new purpose. Inside the walls were painted in pastel colors, with murals of cartoon animals dancing across the halls. Children's laughter echoed faintly from the waiting area. Laura smiled. For the first time in a long time, it didn't hurt to smile. That evening back home, she sat on the porch with Mark. The sun dipped low, casting gold across their quiet little yard. She looked down at her belly, gently stroking the curve of life growing within her. And then, almost to herself, she whispered, "I want to teach our child something." Mark turned. "I want them to know that real love isn't defined by blood. It's a choice, one we make every single day." Mark didn't speak. He just reached over and took her hand. And in that moment, they weren't survivors. They were builders of a life, of a truth, of a home where love wasn't inherited, it was earned and given freely. Laura stood in her garden barefoot on the grass still warm from the sun. The wind rustled the leaves and a soft peace settled in her chest. It had been 2 years, but some memories don't fade. She looked over at Mark, who was kneeling by the flower bed, humming a soft tune as he watered the roses. Then she said, not loud, but with certainty, "Your instinct saved us, Mark." Mark looked up. Laura continued, "You didn't have proof. You didn't need it. You just knew. And I chose to trust that." She exhaled, eyes fixed on the petals dancing in the breeze. Sometimes what saves your life isn't logic. It's love, disguised as a gut feeling. And then, a pause. A truth revealed in silence. So if someone loves you and tells you something feels wrong, don't ignore it. That might be the moment that saves everything. Look at me, just for a second. Really look. If you've ever had that feeling, that deep, quiet voice inside you whispering, "Something's wrong," stop, breathe, listen. Because polite people end up dead all the time. Don't keep walking just because someone's expecting you. Don't ignore your gut just because you're scared of seeming rude. And don't wait for proof to save yourself. Your instinct doesn't need evidence, it just needs your trust. So next time it whispers, don't silence it. It might be the only thing screaming to save your life. Your gut isn't superstition, it's wisdom wired into your survival. In a world obsessed with proof, we forget the first alarm isn't always a fire. Sometimes it's a whisper. Laura's story reminds us that not everyone who shares your blood deserves your trust. And not every invitation is worth accepting. If something feels wrong, even if you can't explain it, you don't owe anyone an explanation for staying alive. Trust those who love you. Honor the instinct that whispers when no one else will. One pause, one decision can save your entire life. If this story made your heart race, made you feel, or made you remember something you've buried deep, then don't just watch, subscribe. Because here we don't just tell stories, we expose truth. We protect the quiet voice inside all of us. Tap that button, share this with someone you'd trust with your life. And remember, your story might be next.